Recently, I've been doing a bunch of FastBoot work, and part of this work involves testing. And to get the testing story right in FastBoot, I've extracted some of this code that I've written into an add-on. So today in this video, I want to take you through that add-on and show you how you can use it in your Ember app to test your FastBoot application. So I have this add-on called Ember CLI FastBoot Testing, and there's this link up here, and we can visit the add-on docs site. And we can see this code snippet here, and what this does is it gives us an acceptance-like test for FastBoot applications. So we have this visit helper, which will render our FastBoot page, and then we can use QUnit's assert DOM to assert that the H1 on the page has the text my application. And this visit looks like what we're used to when we're writing Ember tests, but we're actually importing this from this library up here. So this is a special visit for FastBoot applications. So in today's video, we're going to be testing Ember Map. This is a FastBooted application, and specifically we're going to test this about page. So if we refresh this page, you can see it renders really quickly. This is our FastBoot cache serving this page. So this is what we're going to be testing. So let's go back to the FastBoot testing docs, and we'll check out this Get Started link. And then over here, we can come to the Quick Start Guide. And this is just a bunch of commands to get us up and running quickly with FastBoot testing. So the first command is to Ember install FastBoot testing. We'll copy this and install this into Ember Map. Okay, the next step is going to be to use a generator to create our first FastBoot test. So we will copy this line. And our first test is going to be the About page. So we're going to name this About page. And then now, if we go over to our editor, we can see under our test folder, a new FastBoot directory got created. And inside of that, we see our About page test. So this is the basic scaffolding of what a FastBoot test would look like. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to rename this test. I'm going to say it renders the About page. And then instead of visiting the home page, we're going to visit /about. And then we're going to leave this assert OK true. And we're just going to run the test now and see if this passes. Let's go over here and fire up the test server. Okay, and I need to come back to the editor and save this file. And then now I'm going to visit the good old testing URL. And I'm going to let this run for a minute to make sure all of the Ember Map test suite is passing, just to make sure that installing this add-on didn't break anything. Okay, and there we go. Our test suite is still passing. So let's focus into that FastBoot test. And I'm going to uncheck Hide Past Tests so we can see it. And it's passing. And that's good because all we have is assert OK true. So I would hope this would be passing. So ultimately what we want to do here is we want to make sure that this About page is rendering correctly. And so we'll probably assert against something on the page like an H1 or an H2 tag. Before we do that though, I want to see the output. So I'm going to await pause test. And now inside the testing container, I can see the output of my application. And if you're familiar with acceptance tests, you've probably seen this before. But the thing about this output is this is not an Ember app. This is HTML generated from FastBoot rendered to Ember's testing container. So this is really cool. This lets us test that our app was able to render in FastBoot correctly. Now, to assert that this page is rendering correctly, I think I'm going to start by asserting the page title. So I'm going to go ahead and inspect this We Love Ember element. and I can see that this is an H2 tag that says we love Ember. So I'm going to go over my test, and I'm going to use qnits assert DOM, and I'm going to say there's an H2 that has text, we love Ember. And I'm going to get rid of this assert OK true. So let's give this a run. And I'm going to make this a little bigger. And I still have that pause test in there, so we will use resume test to get to our assertion. And there we go, it's green. Pretty cool. I'm going to clean this up and remove the pause test. And just make sure that everything is still green. So one of the reasons that we set up FastBoot in Ember map was to get the head tag, the title tags, the meta tags for bots and search engine crawlers working. And so part of writing these FastBoot tests is me knowing that our title tags and our meta tags are rendering correctly. So that's the next test I want to write. On this About Ember map page, if I view the source and search for title, I want to know that the About page has a title of About Ember map. So let's go ahead and write that test. I'm going to go ahead and copy this one. And I'll say it renders the About page title. And then instead of asserting the H2, I'll assert title. And I believe that said About Ember map. So let's give this a run. So that's interesting. Our test expected About Ember map and got something that's iOS spinner. And I'm not quite sure where this is coming from, but if we go back and look at this code, we're using assert DOM to make sure the title is About Ember map. But in our tests, the title of this tab is Ember map test 1 out of 2. And so we have a conflict here where we're saying check that the title is About Ember map, but the browser has a title from the test runner. And then not only that, we're rendering our Ember app inside of this div down here. So Ember's testing container is not made to render a full page. It's made to render sort of the application template inside this testing container. But with FastBoot, we have so much more than just the HTML. We have, there's an HTTP request, there's the head tag, there's all that meta information I was talking about. And so we need a way to assert that without rendering it inside of this div. Because again, rendering it inside of this div would mean rendering multiple head tags on this page, multiple title tags, and that would be a violation of the HTML spec. It would be hard to test, a little ambiguous. So luckily for us, this FastBoot testing add-on provides a way that we can assert against these things. And the way we do that is this visit helper not only visits this page and renders the HTML, but it also has the ability to return that meta information that I was just talking about. So if we come over here, we can say let HTML document equals await visit about. And this is the HTML document that's returned from FastBoot. And it's going to contain the head and the title tags and all of that. So let's throw a debugger in here and take a look at this. So we can do HTML document. And we can see this is a browser DOM document object. And we can open up the head, and this is pretty cool. We can see the head that's generated from FastBoot. And somewhere around here, we will see a title tag right here, About Ember map. And so when we're testing the head, the title, these meta tags, we want to use this HTML document in combination with qnit DOM. So also, luckily for us, QUnit DOM has a way where we can specify our own HTML document. By default, QUnit DOM is going to use the Ember testing container, but as a second argument, you can pass in an HTML document. So we will pass in our HTML document with our FastBoot-generated title tag. And we're just going to remove this pause test and this debugger. And let's give this a run. And there we go. Our title tag test is now passing. And just to double check our work here, let's close the inspector and make this test fail. Let's come over here and we'll say AB Merber map. I don't even know what that says, but I would expect it to fail this test. And there we go. So everything seems wired up correctly. Let's undo this and give it a save. So there's one more test type I want to show you before we wrap up. And that's testing the HTTP status code that gets generated from FastBoot. Again, since our server is generating HTML, it's no longer just putting a handlebars template inside of an existing index.html. There's all this meta information that is related from a FastBoot request. And one of these pieces of data is the HTTP status code. So if a site renders correctly, we'd expect a 200. If we're rendering a file not found route, we would expect to get a 404. If we're doing transition twos in FastBoot, we would want to see 301s. And so we need a way to test these things. And the visit helper will also supply us with the HTTP status code that FastBoot generates. So if we come over here, we can do status code from await visit. And then we can use QUnit to say assert equal, and we'll say status code is at 200. We'll remove this assertion, and we would expect this to pass. And just to show that the status code is right, we can come up here and change this to 400, and we would expect this to fail. So it's working. Let's undo this. And then also this would be a good opportunity to change the title of this test. We'll say that it responds with the correct status code. And there we go. So you might be looking at this test and saying, okay, this is just a bunch of visiting a page, rendering a page, and then asserting against the output. What about behavior like clicking links or filling in forms? And remember that FastBoot is only used for the initial render of a page. So when it becomes time to click a link or fill in a form, our Ember application has already hydrated that page and taken over. And so these FastBoot tests don't need to cover that behavior. That behavior, the user behavior, is covered in our normal Ember acceptance tests. So the FastBoot tests are just concerned with initial render. So hopefully you found this little demo helpful. If you're excited by this, give this out on a try in your own FastBoot apps and reach out to us if you have any questions.